A story of two Romanian Gypsy brothers, Patora and Horgze. Another in the Past Lives series by Alan Lee Whiteman. This story spans the time from 1400s AD in the Eastern European country of Romania to present day in the Southern American state of Texas. Two brothers growing up in a gypsy traveling camp with a different focus in that of life who reconnect after 800 years apart to meet as neighbors in a semi-rural community of retirees. But the story also has the common thread of revisiting issues around their individual experiencing that of life and that of intuitiveness. Or stated otherwise, as the contrast between assertiveness and that of receptivity. Mixed in with this is a gender swap of male energy forcefulness in contrast to the nominal female energy of intuition. Two brothers in close age difference, Patora the older brother and Horgze as the younger. Their parents Adrian and Fernet already have two earlier children, a son Daniel and a daughter Sabina, though their names and identities are not all that important to this story. 00 The father Adrian is an entertainer of sorts, an early form of a song and dance man having a love of the spotlight on the stage where he also does acrobatics, magic tricks, and sings of the joy in the experiencing of life. In an Italian setting, L'Abimo would be his favorite melody where he seeks to impress his friends singing the words, "Let us drink from joyful cups." The mother Fernet seeks a different kind of stage, a bit more private and conscripted, where she does tarot card readings for the more sedentary folks who live in villages or small towns but avoiding cities. Like her husband, she also has a costume of sorts, one expected by the clients who come seeking knowledge of their fate or fortune, for the client is the one who pays and has a kind of expectation, whether the reader be that way in real life or otherwise. But, the expectation is seemingly universal. Only women are to have the intuitive sense and skill at being a reader, not men, for which there is a vastly different expected skill set of labor. The mother Fernet has a bit of a constraint on her work, as many Christian-oriented city dwellers take the viewpoint that fortune-tellers, and gypsy folk, are untrustworthy and communing with ghosts is considered anti-religious. The sense of anti-gypsy bias was real, as at times the stance resulted in directed death to the gypsy. This bit of concern also has presence in the smaller towns and villages, as the locals know from long past experience that arrival of gypsy folks seems to always be accompanied by reports of theft, either in the dark of night or via daytime pickpockets. Men of the gypsy caravan worked ad hoc as day laborers. They repaired pots and pans, helped out in the clearing of fields, worked as extra hands during harvesting or managing horses or cattle. For the caravan travels on roads with mobile homes pulled by horses. The men also buy and sell horses, perform riding stunts, and help run auctions for the sale of horses, cattle, and sheep. Like the women of the caravan, there are expectations about what men do and do not do. For there is a social custom that men do well-identified things and women do a different set of things. This social custom extends to their children. Boys do and behave in a certain way, and girls likewise. But woe to the son or daughter that displays or harbors a desire or skill to do the other. Sons are to act assertive and never be seen or thought of as being of the feminine intuitive. Likewise, daughters are to act receptive and display intuitive skill, not to be forceful, bold, or authoritative. Contrast this with advertisements for modern-day video games where there is presented the image of a shapely or nearly frontally revealing woman wielding weaponry of bow or sword. Later in their life, say mid-30s, Adrian and Fernet have a second son of Patora and 18 months later a final son, Horgze. Both sons enter life in a well-established family where the parents are busy doing their respective jobs and there are older siblings to contend with. The older siblings for a while are stuck taking care of the younger brother and watching out that he does not get into trouble. For a while Patora is the darling of the family, but with the final arrival of Horgze, Patora eventually finds himself tasked with looking after his younger brother all the time. Patora develops a sense of being tasked as a babysitter and restricted from being with other boys his own age or slightly older. For both sons find themselves needing to know how to be that of a male in the gypsy society and how to be successful in transiting life as the caravan camp of people travel from village to town to a different village. For one in that context has to know that what worked in the past week on interaction with locals, does not necessarily work well in the next. Now, all come into life with their own plan of action and intention of experience. For these two, that plan and intention dealt with obeying the parents and the older brother and sister. But the brothers also had something different in plan. They worked on a blending of assertiveness and receptivity, where the former is a male characteristic and the latter female. This underlying driving intent around assertiveness and receptivity or forcefulness and intuition colored their life expression in a way not found in their parents or older siblings. Despite the winds of life thrown in their direction, all they did revolved about their life intent. But all plans, noble in their intent, do change. Patora eventually became more forceful in his actions and died early at age 24 years as a consequence of his assertiveness. Horgze became more intuitive, like that of his mother, lived until age 38 and died from that of a dark or black plague transiting their area. Both boys grew up in the same common environment and the influences casted from the environment. Around the middle years of childhood, they were shaped together and over time came to know each other as if they were one and the same. Acting in their common intuitive space, they got to the point of being able to read each other's mind, finishing sentences of the other and anticipating the other's reaction and movements well for a while. Their father, being an entertainer on the side, was seen gathering attention from others, men, women, and children, and this was appealing to Patora. He wanted the same kind of attention and praise from others in the camp. Horgze sought a different kind of attention, one he saw in his mother Fairnet when he observed local villagers seeking her out for tarot card readings or counseling. While the men of the camp worked at day laboring to produce income, Horgze saw his mother's craft as more refined, less stressful, and equally producing of income. In the following years, Patora recognized a sense of responsibility in taking care of Horgze and being that of a male in the Gypsy society. But this sense of being responsible became in time to a burden or restriction around his age of 10. Patora wanted to be like the just older boys and did not want to always have to be taking Horgze along everywhere the other boys wanted to go. Horgze felt this growing frustration in his brother and developed a sense of abandonment when Patora would skip off with the other boys for whatever adventure emerged. In time, a frustrated Patora advised Horgze, "You have to make friends of your own age." And having little practiced skill in doing so only further his sense of aloneness inside. For the two brothers had been connected at the hips since their earliest memories. The advice was good but not all that effective. Seeking approval from their father Adrian, particularly his skill in doing minor magic tricks, really sleights of hand, they worked at being a two-person team of pickpockets. Gaining proficiency in attention diversion skills produced a minor income of a sorts appropriate for their age and helped cement the brotherly bond and a shared sense of accomplishment. Showing off their stolen goods to the camp people brought praise from many, a kind of reward not found in manual labor. They became rather good at the craft and found it to be a kind of fun activity until they got a bit too cocky in attitude and finally got caught one day in a village near the Gypsy camp. The local villagers bound the two boys to a pillory in the village center and told them that authorities would come 2 days hence and take them away to jail or prison. Worse yet, the boys bound to the pillory were demeaned by the locals, who threw garbage at them and urinated on them. All of a sudden their favorite and common activity was no longer fun. Days later the villagers released the dehydrated and hungry brothers. The two ran back to the Gypsy camp only to find the place vacated, but they followed the wagon wheel tracks and rejoined their family and community. Being ashamed and humiliated, and to a degree reprimanded by their father and the camp leader, they vowed to refrain from further minor theft, but what they really promised instead was to just not get caught the next time. Being caught and demeaned was traumatizing, more so to Horgze than Patora. Patora, seeking to be more like his father, often the center of attention, just worked at being more skillful in theft. Horgze, being more traumatized, turned to his mother for guidance and counsel. And in that process he developed his intuitive skills, much in contrast to Patora's growing assertiveness. This is where the brothers started to diverge. Other boys of Patora's age or a bit older encouraged him to further refine his skills at theft and to work more alone or with the older boys, who saw in Patora a new recruit of sorts to their unofficial gang. The other boys reject Horgze for spending more time with his mother and thus being more like a girl, a most devastating labeling. Horgze was essentially ostracized by the community of boys in the Gypsy camp. But Horgze was working on his life intent and kept on with developing his sense of intuitiveness. Years later, Patora married and became a father of 2 children. Horgze became the uncle to the children and in part became a second father and a good friend to his brother's wife. He saw in time how to use his intuitive skills being the uncle to the children and providing a sense of guidance and parenting. He also saw his brother, now having to be a real provider, drift further into assertiveness and being more bold in life. Patora became more of a practiced thief, working with the near-aged younger men or alone when the opportunity arose. Horgze was aware of this particular growth in his brother, but saw himself as unable to restrict or change his brother's inclinations. A time came at age 24 for Patora where one day he again got caught at thievery and some local villagers sought to teach him a lesson by beating him savagely. The villagers had no intent to kill Patora, but this in fact did happen. Horgze discovered this death of his other half and felt shame for not being intuitive enough to anticipate Patora's move and somehow stop his brother from being too risky. In time Horgze married his brother's widow and became a working father to his once nephew and niece. This continued for another 16 years as his now adopted children grew up and themselves married and began families. Now with life more complete, Horgze contracts the Black Plague and dies. 800 years later and after many intervening lives and marriages, the soul extension of Horgze incarnates again as another male who continues the work of developing intuitiveness in the context of being withdrawn as seen by others. He becomes a classic intuitive thinker and an observer who at times seems to be fear-driven and at other times being more relaxed in the experiencing of life. He grows older and in reflection realizes that his personality makeup, despite his many attempts at seeking marriage, finds himself preferring to live alone with just a few friends. In contrast, the soul extension of Patora incarnates as female and out of family upbringing becomes more assertive and opinionated about how things are supposed to be in life. She seeks to have a new being where she can be both assertive in life and at the same time develop being more intuitive within her own self. She marries a man with a career that keeps him away from home for longer periods of time than that of the husbands of other women friends. They have 2 children, move around a bit, and then lo and behold find themselves as neighbors to the older single man, the reincarnation of Horgze. She does not really know this is the case. And the strangeness of the choice of purchased home is that her husband runs afoul of the Community Property Owner Association rules, when their choice of where to live could have been different. She and her husband could have as easily purchased property outside of the retirement subdivision on a much larger 3 or 5 acre lot where they would not run afoul of retirement community rules and regulations. She and the now much older neighbor man finally reconnect. Over time there is more interaction between her and the older man and she finds herself bothered and a bit wary of further interactions with him. He seems to know things about her that he shouldn't, almost like an uninvited invasion of privacy. She acts a bit standoffish, desiring that he gets the message to just go away. But he does not go away. In fact, out of rather strange prompting from her husband, his own intuitiveness leads to his discovery of the prior lifetime together as brothers. There is a strange attraction energy between the two that she finds disturbing and cannot explain. For the older man's perspective, he has a sense of obligation to somehow repay her for the distant degree of attention given by Patora to Horgze. In truth, there is no obligation on his part or her part, for what is present is just a memory of a past time together now long gone. What is present is an awareness that he, out of older age and experience, can exchange roles, being like that of the young Patora, and be more of a counselor or advisor to her as she transitions into the change of life. This change of life coupled with an increasing sense of being alone as her children move on in their own lives and perhaps as the husband seems to drift away. The question remaining: do they resume the long-past brother relationship, and if so, in what way?